my world. It is I, Lynsey G. I have a scratchy voice today. And I have made it very dark in the room behind me because the room behind me is a freaking mess. So, hi. I am feeling dressed up today. I don't know why. I just felt like it's the holiday season and I work for myself from home, so I don't get to go to holiday parties anymore, like work parties, so I am just dressing up on my own. Why not? It'll be fancy. So, okay, I'm gonna keep messing with the camera because I want to get it just right. I'm still kind of like way down on the bottom of the screen, but oh well. I want to fix it. I want it to look better. Hang on. Maybe I can do this. Or maybe I'll just zoom in a little bit. Oh no, that's too much. Alright. Alright, this'll work. So, hi everybody. It is a Sunday afternoon. Here in Montana, it's very cold. There's been snow on the ground for weeks now. It's holiday season. I am really unprepared today. I have had really bad insomnia, for the past week. Not actually, I don't know if it counts as insomnia. I can't really sleep until like 5 or 6 in the morning at the earliest, usually. Like I'll fall asleep for a little while, then I'll wake up and be wide awake until it's basically starting to get light out, and then I fall asleep. So, this morning I slept from, I don't know, like 6 until like noon, which was an hour ago. So I got up and was like, oh god, I have to go live, oh no. So I don't really have my shit together, so to speak, but, yeah, that's where I've been at. I don't know if anyone watching, is also an insomnia sufferer, but it's a thing that comes and goes in my life. It's been happening more over the past few years. I'm not sure why. Maybe just because I don't have as regular a sleep schedule. Like, I don't have to get up at 7 every morning to go to a job. And I would still get insomnia when I did, but I think that just, like, the fact that I had such a strict schedule kept it from getting as bad as it does now. Or maybe I'm just getting old and not sleeping is my life in the future. I don't know. It's kind of funny, though, because I bet that a lot of people who might watch this will think, oh, that sounds great, you can get up at noon if you want to. And, like, that is nice in a way, except then when I get up at noon, I still have an entire workday ahead of me, and most of my work days are much longer than 8 hours, so if I get up at noon, and then, you know, I take a shower, I get dressed, I have some food, I don't start working until 1 or 2, and then I have to work until at least 10 at night to get all my stuff done, so that basically means I don't really get to do anything, like, social with anybody, especially because in Missoula, I don't know, coming from New York, Missoula feels to me like a very early town. Like, if I get done working at 11 o'clock, it's unlikely that anyone I know is going to be like, oh yeah, come out, we're at this place. Except actually some people I know who work at the strip club are probably available, but I don't have enough money to go to the strip club. So anyway, that's me complaining about my life. Hello everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of Lynsey G Reads from Her Book. So, I don't know if you all have heard about the crackdown that's going on social media right now about adult content, but Facebook has released a new terms of service that basically says you aren't allowed to post or talk about anything sexual at all. Like, Facebook was already pretty hardcore about that, especially when it came to images and videos. You know, adult content was, like, not cool, but now they've basically said, like, I think they even put as an example in their terms of service, don't post looking for some fun tonight, because that's too suggestive, which is ridiculous. What if you want to go to a trampoline park? That's fun. That's something you can do at night, but you're not allowed to talk about it on Facebook. So, I am I'm upset about this for a number of reasons, which I may or may not go into here. I don't really know if it's worth it, and I certainly don't want to damn myself to the Facebook gods since I'm using this platform to do my live readings. But it may affect this reading. I'm not sure, because this is a book about adult stuff. It's not actually suggestive. I don't go into any detail about my own personal sex life or anything like that. And it's not like an erotic book, but it is a book about the adult entertainment industry. So we'll just see how this goes. And if the stream goes dead midway through, there's a 50-50 chance that there's some technical difficulties, or Facebook has decided that I'm inappropriate. So, whee! What a brave new freaking world we live in, where we don't get to talk about things in our lives, because that's scary. That's not necessarily the case. There are other reasons, not just because Facebook is prude. And again, I don't want to be shit-talking the platform that I am using to make this video, so I'm going to try to rein it in a little bit. But I do want to point out that social media has become an incredibly important place for marginalized communities of all kinds, particularly people who work in the sex industry. And although places like Facebook haven't been very friendly to them for a long time and aren't really used by the sex industry so much, it's still, it's a community building place. Facebook is, Tumblr is, Twitter is, Instagram is, all of these places are places where people go, to find other people who do similar things to what they do. And sometimes, yeah, sure, that can be groups of people that are, undesirables, but there's also people who are like making an honest living, being porn stars or being webcam models. Those are both perfectly legal professions, yet these people are not allowed to make communities online anymore. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's legislation that's about to go into effect that makes social media and any website responsible for the content created and shared by its users, which frankly I believe is unconstitutional because it violates the First Amendment. Anyway, I don't want to go into it too deeply because that will alienate a lot of people who might want to watch, but it's not cool. And so a lot of social media platforms have enacted these rules about not using adult content, and it's largely because of this new law, FOSTA, SESTA. There are other reasons, definitely, and one of the big bummers about it is that Facebook actually was a big proponent of FOSTA, SESTA. They kind of pushed it through, made it a big deal so that Congress would want to do it. So they've been planning this for a while. And the bummer of FOSTA SESTA is that the supposed idea behind it was that it's supposed to protect victims of sex trafficking by limiting sex traffickers' ability to, advertise and talk about what they do online. But what's actually happened is there's basically been it hasn't done anything to help catch sex traffickers because they operate very much underground because what they do is very much illegal. And horrible and bad, and nobody likes them. But other communities of people that deal heavily with sex, either professionally or just as an interest, have been really hurt because basically anytime that you mention a lot of sexual things, particularly people of color and queer people whose sexualities are not as cookie cutter and normal as what people in power think is acceptable, I suppose, they're getting really shut down and they're being really censored, and especially for communities where their livelihoods depend on their ability to do business online, a lot of escorts and cam girls, that type of thing, they're being hurt really badly. A lot of people who do private sex work, who used to be able to advertise online via services like Backpage, Craigslist, that kind of thing, have been forced into doing street-based sex work, which is much less safe, and actually puts them at a much higher risk of falling prey to sex traffickers. So, clearly that law and its implications are not doing what it's supposed to do, but it is leading to a lot of shuttering of those communities, which really sucks because most of those communities are already very marginalized and have a really hard time getting by, being, you know, out about what they do. So, yeah, it really sucks, and I really hope that I am able to read from my book, because one of the biggest things that I want to do with this book is educate people who are not so deeply mired in the world of sex work as I am. People who don't necessarily find it quite as fascinating as I do, so haven't devoted a decade of their lives to it. I want to educate those people about the fact that, you know, people in the sex industry, particularly the porn industry, which is what I know most about, are pretty much just like everybody else. They're not scary, they're not evil, and I have learned a lot about them and the industry that they work in, and I want to share it with people. I want to make it less scary. So, this feels really important to me, for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to go on a rant. I almost just launched into a rant. I'm not going to. I'm going to take a sip of my drink and read chat. JL says, this is like the lamest platform ever. Ugh. Well, in a lot of ways, Facebook is really lame, but it also has a lot of functionality that works really well for me. So that's why I use it. One of the cool things about Facebook Live is that after the fact, you can actually download the video that you've made onto your device, and then you can upload it to other places. So I do my live streams here because I was able to make an event page and, you know, make a whole thing out of it. And then I can take the video and put it up on YouTube, which is something I've been doing for the past few readings, and it's worked out really well. I also just have a more, I don't know, I think a more active following on Facebook than in other places, so I chose to do it that way. And also, I have a Facebook page that is specifically devoted to my writing about the sex industry, whereas, you know, like on Instagram, I only have one Instagram account, I only have one Twitter account, and as we will see in the chapter I am about to read, my relationship with my family is very fraught because of the nature of the work that I do. A lot of my family members follow me on Instagram and on Twitter, and they know what I do, but it is upsetting to them. So I have chosen to make this Facebook account separately so that they can choose whether they want to engage with it or not. And that means that if I'm doing a live stream like this, someone in my family who is not okay with what I do isn't going to stumble across it and be like, oh, Lynsey's doing a thing, let me find out what that is, and then, you know, be upset by what they see. So there's a lot of reasons that I've been using Facebook for these streams. We'll see if I am allowed to continue doing that. Rosetta says, oh no, I hope you can keep streaming on Facebook. Me too. I think Facebook's easy. You know, it's kind of like the biggest of the social media platforms, and it's the easiest to use because of that. Jake says, the conservative lizard kings strike again. Lizard kings and queens, Jake. And queens. Feminist. Her lizard queen. So yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. That's where the internet is at. I keep wanting to rant about things, but I've already ranted, and I don't want to scare anybody away with my rants right now. I want to read my book, so I'm gonna do that. Hang on, let me type something real quick. Okay. I'm gonna read my book. I'm gonna do the thing. Okay, so actually, this chapter is a little bit less dry than some other chapters, I think, because it tells the story of me coming out to my family as a porn writer. That was a scary moment for me, and it goes into a little bit more of like my family situation. Yeah, so this is a more of a personal chapter. I hope that you guys will like it. Jail says, I think we can blame these changes squarely on the Lizard Kings. Jail and Queens. Lizard Kings and Queens. The Queens don't just get a pass because they're female. That's not how this works. If you want to be fully feminist, you have to hold women accountable for their actions. And women, lizard women, are just as accountable for the workings of the lizard people as the Lizard Kings. I think. I mean, I guess it's possible that the lizard people have just as patriarchal a society as we do, and actually the queens aren't as well represented. I don't know that much about it. If anyone does know, please feel free to educate me. Alright. I'm going to read Chapter 7, The Conflicted Existence of the Female Porn Writer. So here's a picture that I love of me interviewing Nina Hartley. I think that this was, I want to say in 2010, maybe? It was at a party on the Lower East Side of Manhattan for the New York Sex Bloggers Calendar release party, I believe. I don't think that group is still really functional. If it is, I haven't heard anything about it for a long time. But they had a group of New York sex bloggers that got together and made a calendar. And at the release party at a bar on the Lower East Side, I met Nina Hartley for the first time. We had a great conversation. She is a fantastic human being. And I stuck a recorder in her face and asked her to answer a bunch of questions, and I don't remember what I asked her. But we've been pretty cool ever since then. She's just fantastic. I'm not sure why that picture is at the beginning of this chapter exactly, but whatever, works. Okay, I'm going to fix my lighting here a little bit so that I can see better to read. And here we go! With the biggest opportunity of my professional life bearing down upon me, I had to face the most daunting task of my personal life, telling my parents what I had been up to since I'd moved back to New York. And so I'm gonna be clear about what the biggest opportunity of my professional life was. I had landed a year-long column writing about being a feminist and a porn writer at the same time at McSweeney's Internet Tendency. And it was definitely the biggest break that I had had so far as a writer. And I knew that it had the possibility of getting much bigger than anything I had written before, and I didn't want my family to find out about it through not me. So, I knew that their response would be shock and likely horror, but I was proud of my accomplishment. McSweeney's was, and still is, a big freaking deal. I hoped that when they read the columns, it might be a source of non-confrontational information about my career. Explaining to them the finer points of my thinking about orgy scenes might be difficult over the phone, but the deep thoughts I had to offer on the subject were intelligent, forward-thinking, usually feminist, and sometimes even poignant. They were worth reading. At least I thought so, and now someone at McSweeney's agreed with me. It would be a relief to come clean anyway. It had been increasingly difficult to answer questions about my career at family functions. My sisters and cousins were accomplishing things, getting promotions and research grants, graduating with honors, traveling abroad. Meanwhile, I looked like the typical family creative type. A receptionist with little to show for her work. To those that didn't know, I had actually been writing about porn quite a lot. It was time for me to unburden myself, and now that my name would be plastered on the front page of a renowned literary outlet on the web, even my tech-unsavvy family would likely hear about what I had been up to, one way or another. And so, one night, I called my parents. I pep-talked myself into hoping that the years between my childhood and this phone call might have mellowed their perspectives on the immorality of sex, or at least given them perspective, but I doubted it. Oh, hi, Maya! Hi, Douglas. Thank you for tuning in to my stream. I barreled through my rehearsed monologue in a breathless jumble of words that I don't really recall. The adrenaline overwhelmed my memory. I know that I couched it all in lemons to lemonade terms. I've been doing this job that you will find very icky, but I'm getting paid, and I'm leveraging it into something that will be great for my writing career. Hooray! Was the tone that I took. When I stopped talking, they both stayed silent for a long, long time, while I pictured them on the other end of the line, wide-eyed and open-mouthed. My father eventually spoke up. So, this McSweeney's, is that also an adult publication? No, I warbled, breaking into a panicky grin. Not at all. McSweeney's is a prestigious publisher of literature. Real writers publish with them all the time. It's a very big deal for me. Another silence. I could picture him working his jaw, trying to find words. Well, he intoned carefully, I'm glad to hear that you're making the best of the situation. I felt my smile falter. I'm going to take a shower, he said, and hung up. To date, that is the only conversation I have had with my father on the subject of the adult entertainment industry and my involvement in it. This was, I don't know, 11 years ago? No, maybe less than that. Might have been about 9 years ago when I had this conversation with him. Yeah. I think that trauma processing mechanisms in my brain must have been set off during the conversation I had with my mother after Dad hung up, because I can't remember any of the details. I was impressed that she handled it as well as she did, which was likely the result of our shared Northeastern Protestant upbringing, in which emotional reactions are sanctioned only in the direst of situations. I walked away with a glimmer of hope that perhaps someday in the future, my mother and I could have a conversation about sex that didn't involve shaming tactics, long silences, or suppressed tears. In the years since, I have attempted to start that dialogue. As I've moved through reviewing porn films, writing set copy for naughty pictures, interviewing porn stars, interviewing consumers, making documentary films, moderating panel discussions, reviewing books, publicizing adult industry events, blogging about all of these things, and now writing this book, I have tried to bring up my work without forcing details upon her. But her engagement with the subject matter has been grudging at best. She told me once that she had read a few things I had written online and was unable to sleep for days afterward. In the spirit of good daughterhood, I asked my editor at McSweeney's to remove my last name from the column before it was published. I would henceforth publish my explorations of pornographic matters as Lynsey G, or Miss Lags-a-Lot, my other pen name, so that my parents could claim the sex-crazed deviant on the internet just happens to spell her first name the same way as their daughter. Isn't that so strange? What are the chances? For quite a while, I kept the Lynsey G identity separate from my Miss Lags-a-Lot pseudonym, which I had been using at Whack magazine. And the Miss Lags-a-Lot pseudonym was in turn distinct from the other pseudonym I utilized at the print magazines I had been writing for. To be honest, I was becoming increasingly embarrassed by the stuff I was writing for the old school jizz rags. Although I was doing my best to be witty and quietly feminist, there's only so much you can do with 500 words about the surprising perkiness of a pair of E-cups, or the orgasmic expressions in Anal Acrobats 3. And because much of my work involved searching for sexiness in films or images that didn't exactly inspire me, I needed a place to speak more freely and more seriously as Lynsey G. I felt a certain weight lift when I assumed the alliterative, bad joke-making mane of Miss Lags-a-Lot, and a different burden disappear when I sat down as Lynsey G to relieve my mind of my conflicted thoughts as a porn writer. And I had lots of them. Hang on a second. I'm going to have some tea. This is my first tea of the day, folks. I slept way too late. But, I have this really good raw honey that I got at Costco the other day. Like, a huge tub of, like, excellent raw honey. And I think it has a little bit of, like, pollen still in it because it's not filtered. And there's, like, little bits of pollen floating on my tea. It's so cute. Okay. Alright. Let's crack back into it, folks. From where I spent my days at my oversized desk in Midtown. Oh, and for anyone who's joining me who hasn't been following along with all of these, at this point I was working as a receptionist during the day at an art gallery in Midtown Manhattan. It was a really, really, really fancy art gallery. Like, super, super fancy. I met a lot of incredibly rich and famous people who came in to buy really, really, really incredibly rich and fancy art. And I spent most of those days writing porn reviews at my desk. Nobody knew that's what I was doing, except for my one very good friend there. She knew what I was up to. So, yeah. From where I spent my days at my oversized desk in Midtown, I couldn't see anyone trying to bridge the gap between pornographers and porn consumers. There was writing about porn out there, magazines like the ones that I wrote for, which glorified yet often degraded porn stars in pursuit of the consumer dollar. There were industry trade publications which ran press releases about directors' vanity projects. There were online review sites that pandered to whichever companies provided their review fodder, and there were a smattering of scholarly articles tackling snooze-worthy subjects like the significance of eye contact during gangbangs vis-a-vis some philosopher or another's writings. But none of it felt accessible to someone like me, or to the people I was interested in, consumers of pornography who might want to think more deeply about what they were watching. I knew that they had to be out there in the thousands, but nobody had found a platform from which to speak to them. In her 2016 book, The Pornography Industry, Shira Tarrant wrote, Its ubiquitous presence in so many aspects of our lives means that pornography is a rich source for studying the ways in which ideas about gender, race, class, beauty, and sex are constructed, conveyed, and maintained. In 2009, I felt exactly the same way. I'd been attempting to cultivate a space for this discussion at WAC. WAC was the online magazine that I was involved in running. I had been attempting to cultivate a space for this discussion at WAC in my op-eds, where I reported on matters like STI screening in the adult industry and legislative attempts at enforcing the use of barrier protection on adult sets. But although I had complete creative freedom at WAC, I also found myself facing a largely empty room. Our audience was heavily skewed toward the industry itself. As it turned out, convincing consumers to spend more than a few seconds on a website that talks about pornography but doesn't actually show pornography was not so easy to pull off, pun intended. Consumers weren't looking for a place to find out what their favorite porn star thought about Star Trek, which I often ask people in interviews. Times were tough for Americans during the Great Recession, and most were more interested in seeing what that porn star thought about ejaculate on her face. In a porn scene. You get it, like, at the end of the porn scene there's spooge on her face. Anyway, and thus the paradoxical middle ground I hoped my McSweeney's column could begin to inhabit. The space between the industry itself and the public's consumption of the products it sold. Between making porn and masturbating to it. The chasm that few people spend time lingering in after they've gotten what they wanted. Oh, hello, Laurie. Thank you for joining us on today's edition of Lynsey Reads from Her Book. So far, so good. Facebook hasn't kicked me off yet. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, etc., etc. I considered this expanse confusing, fascinating, and scary all at once, and I was standing squarely within it, as neither a creator of porn nor a typical consumer of it. I knew more than your average bear about what was happening on both sides of the fence, and I felt that this was an important place for someone to stand in, someone who wanted to talk about it. I was mostly alone in this space, not only in my writing life, but also socially. The crowd I ran with was a mix of young professionals, artists, and graduate students. A fertile field in which to reap some interesting perspectives on porn, I had hoped, yet I found myself standing in a self-made echo chamber when I brought up the subject. People would seem charmed to find out that I wrote about porn, but also standoffish. Shira Tarrant summed up the experience of being the porn girl at the party in a 2016 interview with The Atlantic. I've had this experience so many times, she said, where people, colleagues, what have you, aren't even listening to what I'm saying about the industry or the politics or the financial aspects of what's going on. They're just thinking about whether or not I'm watching porn. I know exactly how she felt. Nobody knew what to make of me in social situations. I liked to think it was because I was doing something new and different, challenging people to have real conversations with me about their thoughts on smut. But more likely it was simply discomfort. For my generation, which is those not quite young enough to be considered millennials by most people, but too young to be Generation X, porn is a type of entertainment usually viewed privately and in the dark. It has never been something one talks about at a party with a stranger, much less a bright-eyed young female stranger who's earnestly inquiring about what websites you frequent and why. I discovered that most of my acquaintances had never spoken to anyone on these topics, and more to the point, they didn't want to. The one answer I could often eke out of a conversation before the person I was talking to squirmed away to get another drink and then forgot to come back further solidified my belief in this empty space of silence between the adult film industry and its consumers. Almost none of the people I had spoken to had ever paid for pornography. Not even once. When I asked them if they had, I'd often get a series of confused blinks in response, as if the concept had never crossed their minds, and it probably hadn't. As Tim von Swine once pointed out to me, 10 years ago, someone who was 14 is now 24. If you've been jerking off since you were 14 to free porno, you expect it to be free. In a capitalist culture where dollars are stand-ins for voicing approval, this lack of communication between a customer base and the industry attempting to cater to its desires was quite literally hurting everyone in 2009. Porn was getting weirder by the day. And the few who would speak openly about their habits often said that they didn't like the violent and misogynist stuff that they saw online. But none of them were willing to pitch in the dollars to support the kind of porn that they liked. From what I was hearing, most of them didn't even bother looking very hard to find things that didn't make them feel so icky. They kind of just watched whatever they found easily and for free, and then complained about it. I tried to lure them out into the middle area with me by encouraging them to look harder, giving them the names of a few companies to support, and engaging them in a meaningful conversation, but my attempts were largely fruitless. I also exhorted people to talk to pornographers via the many available social media channels. Most porn actors and directors are very active on social media, and they want to know what you want to see, so that they can make it. In an interview, when I asked groundbreaking trans superstar Buck Angel how consumers can help pornographers, he said, "They should speak up and be vocal about what they want to watch. I get lots of specific requests, which I love, and I always try to accommodate them whenever possible." Buck was far from an outlier in that respect, especially in the trying days of the late 2000s, when pornographers were fearing that their industry would be dead in a year. If consumers expressed a serious interest in seeing something, If consumers expressed a serious interest in seeing something, it was very likely that someone would make it in hopes of turning a profit. As more porn stars were building their own websites and filming content for themselves, the space between fans and producers was shrinking, and turnaround time was disappearing. Porn made on spec was no longer a thing of the past, and finding someone to make it was getting easier. Hint, it's even easier now. A lot of performers make custom videos or do cam shows where you can make requests. Get on it, people. This all seemed obvious to me, but I began to realize that other people my age didn't always see porn as an industry made of human beings with whom interaction was possible. It was viewed as more akin to Hollywood, which makes what it feels... Hang on. This is a really confusing sentence. I'm sad that it is in my book and that nobody edited it. I am sad that no one edited this sentence. There we go. Okay. Let's try this again. This all seemed obvious to me, but I began to realize that other people my age didn't always see porn as an industry made of human beings with whom interaction was possible. It was viewed as more akin to Hollywood, which makes what it feels like based on some metric that none of us are privy to. But porn is more like an open book, willing to be rewritten by its fans, and leaving the space between the industry and the rest of us empty was dragging everybody down. So I tried to start the conversations I wasn't having at parties in my column at McSweeney's. I wrote about the dangers I saw in leaving this space empty, the inherent inequality and the drastic separation between them and us. In a culture that already mistrusts and mistreats what Danny Wilde once called the very visible but somewhat ostracized minority of sex workers, a chasm between those who do and those who don't is a fertile breeding ground for prejudice and dangerous lapses in understanding. "A bridge is what we need," I wrote in my McSweeney's column, which gave me the opportunity to invite more people to consider crossing the rickety one that we currently had. I had been learning, and now I was ready to open that learning up to asking big questions, hypothesizing their answers, and making some room for a discussion about them. Although there wasn't a whole lot in the way of feedback, no comment section, and not much going on just yet on Facebook, which was only a few years old at the time, it felt good to shout those ideas of mine into space. And I was onto something. By the midpoint of my year-long column, my editor told me that more people were reading my column than anything else on the site. So that's the end of Chapter 7. The next chapter is Chapter 8, In the Flesh. And this, I might say, is where it gets good. Chapter 8 is where I actually met a bunch of porn stars for the first time. I went to my first industry convention, and it was awesome. It was fascinating. So I actually have 2 chapters about that first interaction, and then I go on from there to go to a bunch of different conventions and write about those experiences. But at the time that I started writing my column at McSweeney's, which probably to date is still one of the most popular things I've ever written, I had still not met most of these people. Although there was one night, I think before the McSweeney's column started, where, oh God, what was her name? I'm blanking on her name, but this big name porn star came to New York, and she had a birthday party that was open to the public. And my editor and friend Jay Vegas and I, and my boyfriend at the time, Matthew, all went. It was like a Halloween themed birthday party because her birthday was near Halloween. So we were all dressed up, and we were able to talk to her for a few minutes, but it was, it was a big loud party, so we didn't get much FaceTime. But that was the first time that I actually met any of the people who were performers in the industry that I was writing about. She was very nice. I think she was probably very drunk. I was really drunk. I remember they had like a special at the bar on apple teenies. And I went up to the bar and the music was really loud, so I just ordered a martini. I hate apple flavoring. I've always hated it. But the guy on the other side of the bar couldn't quite hear me and just heard the teeny part, so he made me an apple teeny. So he gives it to me, and I think I had already had like several drinks before then, whiskey drinks, and I took like one sip of this apple teeny and was like, oh God, no! So I gave it back to him, and I was like, no apple teeny. I hate apple, please. And he was like, okay, well, you can keep it though if you want it. I'll make you another drink. So he gave me the apple teeny back, which I forced down because I was hardcore then. And then he gave me a martini. And I drank both of them, and it was a really bad decision. So that was an epic night. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, 2 martinis in an evening is about like as much as I should do. Like, because I don't know if you guys drink martinis. I prefer vodka martinis myself. So a vodka martini is basically a cup of vodka with some other stuff in it. And I weigh right around 100 pounds. So yeah, that was an epic evening. I still can't remember. I thought that if I just rambled about the evening, I would remember the performer's name. And I'm not getting it. I think it's Gina something. God, I can't remember. She's really pretty. Really pretty. And I had a big crush on her for a while. I'm gonna look on my computer because I know that I have the photo and maybe I can find it. And actually, probably most of you won't even know who I'm talking about if I do find it, because she's definitely not as active now as she was. I think that she's retired now. And that was a long time ago that I met her, so people might not even know who I'm talking about. But I'm gonna try to find it anyway. God, Gina something. Oh, this is driving me nuts. No, that's not it. If anyone wants to start throwing out the names of porn stars whose name is Gina, go ahead, because I will recognize the right name when I see it. I just can't find it. I can't find it. I don't know where it is. That is going to drive me up a freaking wall. Gina. No, like, all I can think of is Gina Davis. She is not a porn star. I have never met her. She's awesome, and I love her. But that is not the person I'm thinking of. Well, whatever. Nobody cares. So yeah, next week, or well, not next week, the week after next, I will be reading about, the time that I went to my first convention and I met all of these awesome people, some of whom were awesome, some of whom were not. I had some crazy experiences, which I will tell you all about. Yeah. So the chapter that I just read, for anyone who came in more recently, was about my experience as I started to write a column for McSweeney's Internet Tendency called The Conflicted Existence of the Female Porn Writer, where I wrote about my experience being a feminist and a woman and writing for adult magazines, which I had been doing for a year or so, maybe 2 years at that time. Because I just had all these questions and I didn't know where to go to get them answered. And I was really interested, particularly in not just porn itself. Like, I had a lot of questions about the industry, but I was also really interested in the way that the general public interacts or doesn't with porn. Because the way I was seeing it, porn is this form of media that millions and millions of us interact with. Some of us, interact with it every day. And everyone who does interact with it, however often, is doing so during like a very vulnerable time, like your interaction with porn, I think, goes a lot deeper, like, in your brain than people tend to give it credit for, because we don't really treat it as a serious subject. And I was amazed by the fact that so many of us interact with it so often, but we don't talk about it. Like, it's not something that we give much mental time to, even though we do give actual time to it in like our daily experiences. So I became really fascinated by the way that people do or don't, acknowledge their relationship with pornography. So a lot of my column at McSweeney's ended up being about that, those topics. You can actually still read the column if anyone out there is interested. I don't know what the quickest way to get to it is. If you go to McSweeney's Internet Tendency, which is a website, you can search for it probably, and it'll come right up. I think I wrote somewhere around 15 columns over the course of a year, and I'm still pretty proud of them. I mean, I think that a lot of the my viewpoint about a lot of the things that I wrote about has changed because I've learned a lot more over the years, but I think that a lot of the sort of basic questions that I was asking there are still really worth asking. So, yeah, you can check that out if you want. I will later on put a link to it in the notes of this video on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can check it out from there. You can also go to my website if you'd like. It's lynseyg.com, and there are links there to the McSweeney's column. I think on my CV page, maybe. I'm still scrolling through my computer and my photos, trying to find this photo of me with this woman because it is driving me nuts that I can't think of her name. Gina. Oh my god, Gina something. I know that I've got a photo on one of my Facebook pages somewhere, but I have a lot of Facebook profiles and pages, and so I'm like trying to scroll through all of my photos on all of them to try to find it. So if anyone out there wants to like scroll through all of my Facebook photos from ever to help me with this, that's cool. I would be alright with that, because I'm supposed to be leading a Facebook live session right now, and instead I'm like frantically going through all of my old photos, because that's how I roll. Anyway, so I'm kind of done with talking right now. If anybody wants to ask any questions, now is Q&A time. We've got about 15 minutes until I've actually got to get going, because in 15 minutes I'm going to be on a different live stream on Twitch, talking about a creative project that I am working on with my partner JL Draco, and a group of other people. JL is going to be making artwork live on Twitch, and the rest of us are going to be hanging out with him and answering questions about Children of Gaia, which is the other project. So if anyone who's watching right now wants to put a link to JL's Twitch account in the chat, that would be cool. I could, but I'd have to be reaching up here to my phone, and I would probably misspell it, so I'm gonna hope that somebody else wants to do that. But yeah, if anyone out there has questions about my experience, about, you know, the writing that I've done, or my general career in writing about porn, or more general questions about the porn industry itself, anything like that, or if you want to talk about coming out experiences, we could do that, because the first part of the chapter was about me telling my parents that I had been writing about porn professionally for 2 years. That was not something they were excited to hear. And actually, to date, I think that's really my only coming out conversation that I've had with my parents. Although there are other things I have tried to come out to them about, they have not been interested in hearing it. So, and it went okay. I mean, they didn't freak out and disown me, but they weren't happy about it. And I have had a little bit more of there's been a little bit of growth between me and my parents on the subject of what I write about, over the past few years, a little bit. But it's basically, the topic is still so uncomfortable for them that we really haven't made much progress, which is very disappointing to me. I wish that I could share more about my life with my parents, but it's just too much for them. So, I feel like I'm getting almost to the point in my scrolling where I might find this photo if it's in here. Oh my gosh, where is it? Okay. Getting close. Oh my god, what if it's not on my Facebook feed and I just thought that it was? Oh, I can't find it. Where is it? Oh my god, this is going to drive me up a wall. Yeah, okay, there's me and Jenna Hayes. That happened like 2 years after this, though. I thought for sure it was in here. Oh, this is so frustrating. Gina. Her name is Gina something. Why can't I find this image? Okay, alright. I'm losing it, people. I need to know the name of this porn star that I met. Ah! Alright, well, Jake says, is it just the stigma that causes such a rift? If you're asking particularly about me and my family situation, I don't know. I don't know. My family situation is really interesting. Because I think a lot of people hearing about the way that my parents have always treated sexuality would assume that my family is like deeply conservative and religious, but they're not. My parents are actually both quite secular and pretty liberal, at least like in their lives, well, in their political leanings. You know, my mom has always been a good Democrat. She actually is like the only Democrat in the county I grew up in. She works at the polls every time there's an election because they need a Democrat there, and she's like the only one who will do it. But the one thing that has always been the most upsetting topic to both of my parents, always, has been sex. And I really don't know what the source of that is. I have tried to get to the bottom of it with my mom a few times, and she kind of just shuts down at a certain point. I don't know what the deal is there. I don't know why sex is so deeply upsetting to them. And I've actually brought it up a few times. Like, you know, I told my mom once that when I was growing up, I literally thought that if I went to jail for, like, murdering someone, that my parents would be less upset than if they found out that I was having sex. And I kind of still feel that way, honestly. When I told my parents that, they were appalled. They were like, we're not like that. We don't think sex is that bad. And I'm like, but you do, though, because every time I mention it, you freak out. And I actually do think that a lot of my my sort of obsession with sexuality comes from that. because, you know, growing up, like, it was very clear from a very young age that I was really interested in sex. And that's just how I am. Like, you know, some people are just more perverted than others, and that's me. Um, and it was so squashed. It was so frowned upon. That I think I became even more obsessive about it than I would have otherwise. And, you know, I developed this career where I write about sex and talk about sex with people, because I think that it's really important, you know. The more we talk about this stuff, especially with young people as they're growing up, the easier it will then be for them later to speak up for themselves, understand their own boundaries, you know, understand other people's boundaries, and that can make for a better society. So I have tried to talk to my parents about this, and I think sometimes a little bit, you know, a little bit gets through, but there's just some kind of very deep revulsion in both of my parents about this subject matter. And I mean, I think that my dad has been able to kind of just compartmentalize it. I mean, I've always been the weirdo in the family, especially to him. I'm the arty, creative writer type, and that's just not his thing. You know, it never has been. So I think that he's been able to be kind of like, well, that's Lynsey, she's a weirdo, I don't know. But, you know, we still get along. We still talk about everything else. And my mom, to some degree, is the same way, but she, I think, is more deeply upset by the fact that I, like, feel a need to do what I do. So I wish I had a better answer for you, Jake, but I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. My family's not religious. I mean, my parents do go to church now, but when I was growing up, that was not a part of our lives. We didn't talk about God in any way. There was no religious underpinning to any of the sex negative upbringing. It just was a bad thing. And I have always been really drawn to bad things. I want to know more about them. So here we are. Sorry, Mom and Dad. Yeah. And I don't want to talk too much about it. Like, I don't want to be airing my parents' personal business necessarily on, a public thing. But that is, that's the truth of my life. And that's where I'm coming from with all of this. So, c'est la vie. Yeah, that's about it for that. Anybody else have any questions or want to add anything? I'm gonna have to get going pretty soon because I do have to go be a part of this other live stream. And thank you, Jake, for putting the link in there. That's where I'm gonna be headed in a few minutes. I have to eat also. I haven't eaten anything today, so I'm gonna make myself some food and then jet over to Twitch to talk about Children of Gaia, which is this awesome fantasy universe that I am helping to work on with J.L. Draco and Chris Cavelli and Laurie Bursig and Jenny Williamson and Pete Lampisona. So it's going to be a book series, basically, and possibly a TV series and a comic series, and it's this huge epic fantasy universe that has been in development for over 20 years. And we are now in the process of turning it from, massive idea into actual books and other things that we can put out into the world. And we're going to be doing a lot of that through my publishing company, Oneshi Press. We have so far published one of these books. It's called The Great Nations of Rendaria. It was written and illustrated by J.L. Draco. And it gives a lot of background information on the history and the major cultural centers of the realm of Rendaria, which is a very magical, nature-based world. And we are currently working on the second book in that series, which is called War and Horses, which is what I think genre-wise would be called a weird western. It takes place in a different realm, a different reality, but the place and time in which it happens is very, very reminiscent of the American Old West. So there's, gunfights and cowboy types and rustlers and all of that. And that book will be out sometime next year. We don't have a production schedule hammered down yet, but hopefully in the first half of next year that book will be out. And in the meantime, we're also working on several other projects. There's going to be a short comic coming out that takes us back to the world of Rendaria in the next Oneshi Press quarterly anthology. Now, this is not that anthology. This is the most recent one that we published back in October. But I'm just giving you an example of what the anthology is like. So in each of these anthologies, we publish short comics from the Oneshi Press team, but also from other comic book creators from all over the world. Got all kinds of stuff in here. They're 60 pages each. They've got comics and fine art examples, guest art, all kinds of goodies. So the next one will be out on the 1st of January, and it will contain a short comic written and illustrated by J.L. Draco from the Children of Gaia universe. It's going to be the first comic in the series, so that's really exciting. The art is really beautiful. Oh, and in that one, there's also going to be a short comic that I wrote that I'm really excited about. It's just like a one-off 8-page comic, and it's called Guts, and I love it. The art is by Diana Camaro, who is I met kind of randomly through a mutual acquaintance online, and her art is amazing, and I love it. So I am really excited. And actually, you can pre-order anthology number 7 right now if you want. The release date is going to be January 1st, so you won't get it until after that, but you can reserve your copy. Because basically, you know, we're a tiny little publishing company, we don't really have many resources at this point, so everything that we publish is in a very limited edition format. So the most copies we've ever had of any of the anthologies is 500. Usually it's less than that, and so if you want your print copy, you can pre-order it now, so basically you can reserve it. Because they go pretty quick. And something else just flitted across my brain that I should say. Oh, but now I can't remember what it is. I am having a really hard time with memory today, you guys. Okay, I am going to look one more time through some photos because it is killing me that I cannot think of this woman's name. I'm going to see if maybe it's on this actual page. That's not her. Oh my god. Where did that picture go? I actually really liked that picture. And I thought that it was definitely on one of my Facebooks, but now it's just gone. I can't find it. And I can't even find it in my my list of photos that I was considering putting in the book. Like, I had a whole folder full of photos that might go in the book. And I can't believe it's not in there. Oh my god, this is literally driving me bananas. I know what I'll do. I'm going to go to my website, lynseyg.com, in case anyone out there is wondering. You can get copies of my book from my website. I have mostly hardcover copies right now available, and I can sign them and send them off to you in case anyone on your list is like, you know, someone who's interested in this type of stuff. My book is a fun read. It's a quick read, and it'll give, you know, the person that you send it to a lot of insights on the adult entertainment industry, which, like I said, is a kind of big part of all of our lives, even though we often don't talk about it. So, okay, now I'm scrolling through. Oh my god. Alright, I went to my website and I typed in Gina, because I remember that her first name is Gina. And I thought I'd get like 5 possibilities and then I could like find her name in there somewhere. But I got 19 pages of results because I have been blogging on my website for way too long. Damn it. Oh, this is gonna drive me crazy. Gina. Maybe it's not Gina. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. Hang on. I'm now Googling porn star Gina. I feel like, oh, no! I found it! Wait. Is that it? Shit, now I'm second guessing everything. It might be Gina Lynn. I think it's Gina Lynn. Okay, I'm gonna look up Gina Lynn. Yeah, it's Gina Lynn. Oh my god, that's the easiest name to remember. Lynn is her last name. Christ, I can't believe I couldn't remember that for so long. Her name is Gina Lynn. That's the first porn star I ever met. I met her at a party. I think it was her birthday party in Manhattan in like 2008 or 2009. She was very nice. I was actually really surprised at how pretty she was. Not because I didn't think that she was pretty going into it, but I kind of thought that like she wouldn't be as pretty in person as she was on camera, because she was so pretty on camera. I thought it had to be like fake. And I met her and like, no, she's really that pretty. I mean, I'm sure like she was wearing a lot of makeup or whatever, but like, no, I was pretty starstruck when I met her because she was gorgeous. And I've had the same experience with a lot of other porn stars since then. Like, the thing about people who are famous for being on camera is that when you meet them in person, they look exactly like they do on camera. Again, maybe minus a little bit of makeup, but like, they're the same person. So, okay, so Gina Lynn is the person I've been searching for this entire time, and it is time for us to go. For anyone who's watching this live, please go from here over to Twitch, because that's where I'm going to be in a few minutes after I've shoved some food into my face. And I will be over there with JL Draco and the rest of the Children of Gaia crew, and we will be talking to you about Children of Gaia. So, thank you all very much for coming to my live stream. I will be back in 2 weeks. It's right before Christmas, actually. I think the 23rd will be my next reading. So, I will see you then, and I really hope that you come back, because the next reading is going to be a lot of fun. It's about the first time I went to a porn convention as a journalist, and how my eyes were opened to so much about the porn industry that way. So, I'll see you over at Twitch right now, and in 2 weeks, I'll see you right back here. So, bye everybody!